Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations, my friends. I'm your host, Linda Joy, Mindset Elevation Coach, publisher of the beloved Aspire magazine, which has been inspiring, empowering, and supporting women to live their best lives, to believe in possibility, and to tap into their innate wisdom. We've been doing that for 17 years. I can't believe this month is our anniversary. And guess what, my friends? It's still free. That's right. Aspire magazine has and always will be a free, high vibration, personal empowerment magazine for women. And you can get your subscription at subscribe2aspire.com. And by the way, it comes with over 35 transformational digital bonus gifts from my sacred supporters and circle of women around me. So be sure to grab that. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I believe, not only from personal experience, but just from the global community of women that I serve, we're going to be talking about addiction. And it's a topic that affects all of us. We either know or lost someone to addiction. And millions of lives are lost every year to addiction, causing more direct and indirect deaths than any other illness. My guest, Dr. Donna Marks, author of Exit the Maze, believes every addiction is a substitute for love. I've been waiting to have this conversation with Dr. Marks, a renowned psychotherapist, addictions counselor, and teacher of A Course in Miracles for more than 30 years. Her work merges her professional experience and her own personal history of substance dependency to offer a single revolutionary solution to all addictions. I am so happy that you're here, Dr. Marks. Thank you for joining me.
And I'm honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, what I always love to start the show with, I believe that every person's journey brings them to the work that they're doing in the world. And I've been hosting this for 7 years. And I like to start with that question many times because I'm always so curious. So what motivated you to become an addiction specialist?
Well, I certainly wasn't motivated for a long time. I was raised in addiction, and I didn't realize that I had many of them myself. And but I did want to be a therapist, and I did want to help other people. So when I started my practice and started doing counseling, I noticed that every single person that came in either had a problem or they knew someone very dear to them that had a problem. And it was almost like Murphy's Law, I don't want this, and here it is. And through hearing other people, I learned to look at myself and became aware that perhaps I too had some problems. So I believe now that it's my life's mission to help people with addiction. I was born into it. There was alcoholism, there was abuse, there was a lot of trauma, there were eating disorders, there was all kinds of dysfunction. And I love my parents dearly. I don't have that energy around that anymore, other than the value that it taught me and helped to shape myself as an individual who can truly be on all the different sides of the fence. So I just really have committed my entire career. I've had other side careers, but my entire life mission has been to work in this field, to work on myself, to be a healed healer. I was an unhealed healer for a while, but to be a healed healer and to enlighten the world that we have been taken hostage. The movie, The Body Snatchers, we have been taken hostage to addiction and we don't even realize it. It's the number one health crisis. And so I don't want to scare anybody. I want people to be inspired to recognize what's really going on here, and to get ourselves back, our truest selves. That's why we're here. We're here. We all have a purpose and a mission.
I personally believe that. And I think for the sake of our listeners, let's identify addiction in your terms, because I think so many of us may believe, well, addiction is drugs or alcohol. But I know from my own life experiences that there's many addictions. So when you were speaking today and in the work that you do, how do you define addiction?
Well, I believe that there's only one addiction, and it's that invisible hole that we feel, those of us that tend to become addicted. And it's always searching for the next quick fix. So the problem with the traditional treatment methods is that if you have an alcohol problem, you can get rid of that, but it's that invisible hole is going to continue to search for something else. So maybe you become a love addict, or you stop cocaine and you become a gambling addict, or you stop smoking and you become addicted to sugar or food. So it's just a never-ending battle, and I faced it myself in terms of just moving from one addiction to the next, never even having a clue what I was doing, not consciously realizing that I had untreated addiction. And so this is what I believe is that we only have that one, and it's that hole that's constantly searching for the next quick fix, and it will land on anything that produces that same effect, that high. It could be video games, it could be porn, it could be the internet, it could be shopping, it could be gambling, it can be relationships, it could be codependency. It's all the same addiction. It's just showing up in different forms.
So powerful. And I'm really curious because you've been, in this field for 30 years. I'm curious, compared to how other professionals may view addiction, what's the difference between how mainstream views it and your view of it?
Well, that depends on who you talk to. If you look at the diagnostic manuals, it's referred to as a brain disorder, which I adamantly disagree with. I'm not a scientist or a medical doctor, but I don't believe that everybody that has an addiction is born with a brain disorder, because that would be most of the population, and that just doesn't make any logical sense. There's no gene that says you have to smoke your first cigarette, have to drink your first drink, have to be on porn 3 times a day. I mean, that just makes no sense. But I do believe that when you abuse your brain by constantly getting high, that it does become disordered, but it will re-regulate itself after a period of recovery, abstinence recovery, and learning how to love yourself. But what's happening is, people, if they have a brain disorder, then they need another addiction, which is pills to regulate the brain disorder. So I don't like that. I think it's a rabbit hole. I don't like it. For years, addiction was treated by therapy or Alcoholics Anonymous, and very favorable results. Not as favorable as we'd like. And I talk about that in my book, why treatment fails, whatever form it takes. But all of a sudden now everybody needs medication. So that really concerns me. From a psychoanalytic perspective, and I am a psychoanalyst, we talk about early trauma and things like that would predispose a child to not having those initial needs met. And I think that this is where I would identify with the most, that when that baby isn't feeling safe, isn't getting enough love, connection, bonding, it's called attachment, a secure attachment with a maternal, in some cases a paternal figure, but that they feel safe, they feel loved, they feel full, they feel nurtured, they feel good. It's a safe world. I feel good here. My needs are met. And that invisible hole does not form, that feeling of something missing, because there isn't anything missing. So I'm not saying that some people who have, had all their needs met don't get addicted, because maybe there is that genetic component that would make them more susceptible. It doesn't say they ever have to engage, but it would make them more susceptible if they do engage in the addiction. So that's called an attachment disorder, when there is not a secure attachment with a maternal figure, and that child feels less than, does not feel loved, and then they take that first drink or they smoke that first cigarette like I did, and I couldn't wait to get the next one 3 packs later. And at age 12, by the way, And so that then the stage is set, that constant, like I feel good when I drink this drink, or I feel I'm okay. And then it's just more and more. So there's all different kinds of theories, on why we become addicted. But I think that's the most viable one, that something has happened early on that's caused that invisible hole. And I don't feel okay. But when I partake, when I'm in a new relationship, when I'm on porn, when I'm getting high, I do feel okay. I forget all about it. I'm in that wonderful, blissful state that I wasn't in as a child, as a baby. And this is a substitute. So instead of attaching to other human beings and sharing and receiving love, I'm attaching to deadly and traumatic and reenacting the void and making it grow, making that invisible hole grow larger until eventually it consumes the person and takes their life.
So powerful. As you were speaking, I was thinking of the people I've lost and loved to various addictions. And I was thinking of that view that you have, that they had a hole from childhood. And, each of the 5 or 6 that just popped in my mind, they all had, I would say, traumatic childhoods, in that phrasing could be anything. Some were sexual abuse, some were dysfunctional families. It was many layers, right?
Yeah.
So as you were speaking, I'm like, whoa, that was the core of all of them. That was their struggle. And something else you said too is a couple of them went from different addictions, like smoking 2.5 packs a day, to the drinking. Then it was an eating disorder. I'm thinking of one person. So it kept morphine. And so they believed, like in our conversations, as I was trying to support them, it's like they believe, like, oh, that's not addiction, I gave it up. But really, they didn't give up the addiction. They gave up the cigarettes, but then they went to alcohol. You find that conversation happening a lot too?
I see it all the time. Yes. And that's why if someone, once they stop an addiction, if they don't learn how, see, every addiction is a substitute for love. I'm confused. When I'm drinking and I get that warm, fuzzy feeling, I love the way I feel, but that's not love. So it's a substitute for love. So once I learn how to have the action of treating myself with love, not abuse. Alcohol is abusive to an alcoholic. So once I replace that addiction with an act of self-love, eventually that wound begins to heal. That invisible hole becomes filled up with the things that it didn't get when I was little. So I learned how to care for myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, and this goes beyond the kind of cliches that we hear. It's directly related to the time you get out of the bed in the morning, to how you think, to how you modulate your emotions, to taking risks, to getting involved. I tell people, whatever you were addicted to, you can turn that into a career, because you have more knowledge and more experience with that particular thing than just about anything else. And so that's why so many people who had addictions do become addiction counselors. Someone who has drug addiction often can be, have an area of expertise in pills and all kinds of chemical substances. I mean, they could be chemists. They remember everything so clearly.
Yeah.
And, people with eating disorders can become gourmet chefs. I know of one person who wrote a cookbook on sugar-free desserts, and I've had them. They are wonderful. So whatever your addiction is, you convert that into something, not only that it becomes a new hobby and a new interest, but it's also loving, and you're also helping other people.
So beautiful. And it's a lot of what I believe in. So I'm so curious to continue this conversation. We're going to take a quick break, Dr. Marks. When we come back, I'm curious how you teach people to break up with their addictions, kind of like, any other bad relationships. We'll be back in a moment, my friends. I'm with Dr. Donna Marks, author of Exit the Maze, One Addiction, One Cause, One Solution. You can learn more at drdonnamarks.com. We'll be right back.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Consistently attract soulmate clients, begin showing up on brand, monetizing on your calling. Welcome all spiritual coaches, leaders, healers, light workers, and practitioners to a show that turns you on in your business and amplifies your magnetism. I'm host, catalyst, and spiritual business coach Rosalind Fung, and I'm here to journey with you into the juicy and help you discover where the real gaps are. Ignite your mindset and soul with strategies and systems as each episode takes you to the sweet spot that activates your soulgasmic business by tuning in on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain. Join me for your light language activation and let's magnetize and monetize.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Dr. Donna Marks, author of Exit the Maze. She's a licensed psychotherapist and addictions counselor and has been serving and supporting individuals for over 30 years. So how do you personally teach people to break up with their addictions?
Well, I don't teach anybody who doesn't want to be taught, number one, because it's a battle. And so, sometimes people just aren't willing. They're not coachable. They're not ready. They don't want to, I think I'll hear things like, you think everybody's got a problem. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people do. And I try to help people to understand that it's an illness, just like any other illness. For example, when by the time you're diagnosed with cancer, you've had it for a while. So wouldn't it be nice if we could identify the signs and symptoms early on? And so part of it is educating people, like if you have a blackout, if you have a DUI, if you're fighting with someone a lot over when you're drinking or over your drinking or over whatever, you're spending or whatever the addiction might be, there's negative consequences. These are negative consequences. And if it wasn't a problem, you wouldn't be having negative consequences. Sometimes people are just going through decades, literally, of addiction, and it's moderate enough that they aren't really hitting bottom, but yet they don't have a life. They don't have friends. They don't have a career. They're just existing. And in those cases, most often there's an enabler. It could be the government enabling them to stay that way because they're being supported with a disability when they don't really have one. They have an addiction or a mental health related addiction. Addiction-related mental health issue. I mean, it gets really complicated. Sometimes people just haven't had enough consequences. For me, I didn't have any of those consequences, yet I did have a consequence of once I partook of something, I would lose control. I couldn't predict how I would behave or how much I would use. So that's the number one thing, is that there's a loss of control. People spend years, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to lose the weight. And then they lose the weight because the diet worked, but the addiction was never addressed. So they go right back slowly but surely, having that 10 jelly beans, 2 cigarettes, to the whole bag or the whole pack. And so it's just a never ending thing. So I try to educate people who are willing to be educated, willing to be open-minded and learn, and then help them to understand that they've become so attached to this particular thing that, like any bad relationship, how long are you willing to put up with the good feeling for the disastrous consequence that's going to happen? How long are you willing to do that? You know, if you have a sugar addiction and now you're pre-diabetic, you've got a mouthful of cavities, you're 50 pounds, 60 pounds overweight, you have no energy, and yet you're living for that bag of jelly beans. Is that a good relationship? Is that one you want to continue, or do you want to learn how to break up with it? So I've been talking about this for a long time now. I'm hearing on TV, you know, break up with your bad relationships, your credit card debt, same concept. And so once you do that, and you must immediately learn how to replace, rather than reaching for the jelly beans or the credit card or the video games or whatever the case may be, you learn how to replace that with healthy behavior, hobbies, interests, activities with friends, meditation, massages, bubble baths, walks, and also your mind. Recognize how the mind is working. I spend a lot of time in my book talking about that. And also healing the past. It's important to heal the trauma in the past that might be stirring around in there.
I find that such an important part on my own journey. It was when I could heal from my childhood. It's like I call my power back. Everything changed. So for myself, that was a major part of my healing. Where does spirituality and, you know, higher source, does that come into your teachings?
Oh, definitely, because what's happening is that high feeling is actually what's missing, you know, that natural spiritual connection, that natural high. And some people, you know, I don't force, you know, anybody to feel like they have to have God, but whatever connects them in that way, whenever connects them spiritually. Some people get it by watching a sunrise. Some people get it from just being in nature, walk in the woods, being in water. Some people get it from meditating. Some people get it when they're painting or they're creating something. There's many ways to connect spiritually. I believe that we all have it inside of us. What we're really looking for out there is inside of us. And the more we learn to access that and be inspired and be connected to that source of internal joy, which takes a little while at first because we've dismissed it for so long and we've gone for that direct hit. So when you give that up, you have to learn how to source the feelings from healthy places and the main places from within. And we do that by choosing to go within, choosing to believe that there is something other than the addiction that can make us feel really good and whole and happy.
Yeah, for me, like I tell my clients, is whatever the name you give your source, you know, your divine, as long as you have the relationship, that's what fills the hole, right? Like for me, I'm looking out at we have conservation land that abuts our home, and then I live on the water in the middle of the woods. I look out there, that's my zen, right? I take time every day to fill myself. And there's something else you said, and it matches my own journey, is we look outside ourselves. And as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those days, like 35, 40 years, I'm 60 now. It was, what can I do to like win business awards, win, you know, outside accolades, and always chasing after, I don't even know what the hell I was chasing after, Dr. Marks. And then it hit me. It was, stop, Linda. Instead of looking out, look in, and it changed my life. That was about 20 years ago. It changed my life. And people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, stop living from the outside in and start living from the inside out.
And that's subconscious contact with your own spirituality right there.
Oh, I love that. Conscious contact with your own spirituality.
Yes.
Yes. And that is the number one thing that I can credit with healing me. That and working on my mindset, of course. That really, I was 2.5 packs a day. I mean, I collapsed the lung, got out of the hospital, got home, snuck a cigarette. This is I haven't smoked in 30 years, thankfully.
Yes.
And I remember waking up when they had to rush me back to the hospital, and the doctor's like, are you trying to kill yourself? And I'm like, I just wanted one puff. And he said, at what cost? That is what you're talking about, right? It was,
Yes.
I placed that feeling of having that one puff over my own well-being. That's an addiction.
Yes, absolutely. And the fact that it got to the point where you had lung issues
Oh,
is
yeah.
long term.
At 30 years old.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So the spirituality part, I've had a lot of conversations because I have a large personal and spiritual development community. So a lot of them will share, like, they're all women. They're like, Lynn, I don't know intellectually, and I'm so curious what you think. Intellectually, each of these women know what to do. They know it, but they don't do it. And I believe it's what you said, that wound inside them that they're trying to fill. There's that disconnect. And then they get upset with themselves because they're like, but I know what to do. Why aren't I doing it? Could you speak to that?
Well, it's a tough position to be in when you think that something that's killing you is good for you, but that's a first place to start. That there's no such thing as a healthy addiction. I mean, sometimes people say, well, I have a healthy addiction. I exercise all the time. Well, when you're getting knee replacement surgery or spinal disc replacements, you're not going to feel that way. So let's really evaluate what you're doing here. So that's the first thing. Like, am I willing to be coerced and manipulated and my own mind hijacked? Something happened to my mind. I'm doing something that isn't good for me and I can't give it up. What is that really about? And yes, there's that wound inside, but even people with wounds are able to stop. And I think it has to get to the point that you say, you know what? It's not my fault that I got addicted, but I am responsible of whether or not I'm going to stay that way. And am I going to keep paying for this addiction? Am I going to keep opening my wallet for it? Am I going to keep believing the messages that it's good for me because it makes me feel good temporarily? Or am I going to break up with it and make myself feel good about me permanently? Because I deserve to feel good. And I'm designed to feel good. That's the way I was made. I was made to feel bad and to constantly medicate myself. I was made to feel good if I live and as a machine, if I'm getting my oil change and get my checkups and doing the right things for this vehicle, it's going to feel good. Now, I'm not dismissing the fact that there are the few people who have organic disorders. I'm not dismissing that at all, but I'm talking generally. People who are addicted have substituted feeling good long term and most of the time for feeling good short term and suffering for that most of the time. One thing I teach people is the very same part of your mind that said, go ahead and eat that chocolate cake. You lost 50 pounds. You deserve it. Or go ahead and get on that porn site. He or she wouldn't have sex with you, so you deserve it. Like, you're not a monk. Or, go ahead and go shopping. I mean, you got your credit card debt of, $100,000 paid down to 80. You deserve a little treat. That same voice is the exact same voice that says to you, the minute you do it, why'd you do that, you idiot? You were 2 years sober. Why did you drink? You were working down your debt. Why did you create another $1,000 debt now? Why did you eat that cake? You knew if you started eating it, you'd eat the whole thing over the next 2 days or even in the same day. What's the matter with you? If we would realize the voice that talks us into doing the wrong thing is the same voice that condemns us for doing it, we would get our power back, because it's not our voice. It's not our truest self. It's the conditioning, it's the programming, it's the advertising, it's the brainwashing, and it's the making of something in such a way to get us addicted to it.
Powerful, powerful, my friend. This so resonates with me. We're going to talk about love in the next segment, especially self-love. And in your book, you share there are 3 parts of self-love. We're going to take a quick break and we will be back in a moment. I am with Dr. Donna Marks of drdonnamarks.com, author of Exit the Maze, One Addiction, One Cause, One Solution. We'll be back in a moment, my friends.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Your worth is not determined by the number on the scale. You are enough right now, exactly as you are. If you're like many midlife women, you've thought, if I could just reach my ideal weight, I'd be so much happier. What we're really craving is our own love and acceptance, and Sarah Haas is that guide for your journey. Sarah is a women's weight release expert and body love coach, and walks alongside midlife women ready to say yes to self-care, self-compassion, and body love so they can become the healthy, vibrant, and unapologetically confident women they're here to be. Her holistic approach integrates nutrition, body movement, and self-care to nurture body, mind, and spirit. Visit sarahhaaswellness.com for supportive resources, programs, and more for midlife women ready to reclaim their health.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm here with Dr. Donna Marks, and we're talking about addiction and how many that have addiction are filling a hole that they've had. And instead of turning inward, they're looking outward. And I can so relate to this whole conversation because I have loved ones and family members, and I've had addictions in my life, including, not eating food or eating food, various ones. I think this conversation is speaking to so many of us. So one of the important parts of your teachings, Donna, is about that whole. And so in the book, you talk about the 3 parts of self-love. So please walk us through that.
Right. Well, as long as that wound is throbbing inside of us and drilling that invisible hole deeper and deeper, we are not very likely to want to stop the addiction, because it's relief from all of that. It gives us temporary and momentary relief. So I do suggest, and actually, if someone would stop, that they would get a lot more benefit from addressing that invisible hole, because there's no medicating it anymore. So that throbbing will come up for. It happens, especially in relationships. Wounds start bumping against another person's wounds. So it's very effective, to be as abstinent and sober as possible whenever you're addressing the wounds, but it's not essential. But the first thing is to face the pain. Some people say, oh, everything was fine growing up. We had good schools, we had good parents, we had this, that. And they don't really understand what they're saying, because they don't realize that maybe some of these essential components of healthy child growth and development that I was mentioning earlier, feeling cuddled, the mother is focusing on the child's needs, not the other way around. That you have to wait until I'm ready, you have to wait, and you have to wait on me, you have to succumb your needs to mine. Babies and children aren't equipped to do that. If the child feels like that they're safe, that yes, things happen, bad things happen, but there's an element of healing within those moments, that they're allowed to be angry, they're taught how to express it in healthy ways. They're allowed to cry. It's very healthy, and then they get over it right away. But in families that these models aren't prevalent, children keep bottled up inside, and that bottling up affects the self-esteem. Sometimes children are abused sexually, emotionally, physically. They're neglected, and these children feel inadequate and less than. So you can't just slough it off. Most people with addictions have some kind of early trauma, not all, but most. And so you have to face that. And I have exercises at the end of each chapter that help to tap into those moments in time so that it can be faced. And it's not, it's not that difficult. Like the first question is, if you had been your parent, what would you have done differently? And, that question triggers a lot of imaginary responses like, oh, gee, I don't know that I would have done like that. I think I would prefer to have done such and such, because we all have that healthy parent within us that knows what went wrong and how a child should be raised. The second step is to feel the pain. Okay, I can recognize that certain things happened. This is where people have the hardest time. They don't want to feel it. Why? Well, if I start crying, I may never stop. Or if I start feeling this, I won't be able to function. Well, you're not functioning like you're supposed to be functioning because you haven't felt it. It's all bottled up in there. It's affecting you constantly. You're reacting to all kinds of situations that you could stop reacting to because that wound would be healed. So it's really, this is the toughest part. People are afraid to feel their feelings. They have been taught and conditioned not to feel them. And I'm just fine, just the way I am. Thank you very much. And so this is a very important second step of feeling the pain. And then the third thing to learn to move towards self-love, and all of these are steps, is to forgive. And you can't truly forgive until you've faced it and felt it. Forgiveness is a release. It's not just like I'm over it and I accept what happened and I'm not upset anymore. For me, I'm all those things. I forgive the pain. I forgive the abuse. I'm not upset at all. But but even beyond that, I find meaning in it. Had I not suffered the things that I've suffered and the experience that I experienced, how in the world could I make it my life mission to help other people overcome it? I couldn't. It would be very shallow and empty. It would be like never having a paintbrush and teaching people how to paint. So we take our own talents and then we take our experiences and we use those, and that is forgiveness and beyond. Of not only am I forgiving my parents, I'm grateful for those experiences because it is a whole component of who I am and my mission here on the planet to help other people recover from addiction.
I gotta tell you, I have goosebumps because right before we jumped on this call, I just taped a video for my audience and I just brought them back to a time 30 years ago. And long story short, in the video, I shared a moment and I said, if I had regrets of all the things in my past, welfare mom, runaway, high school dropout, queen of self-sabotage, then the woman who I am today wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
I had to release but I did. I got to say, Dr. Marks, I carried the shame, sexual abuse, all of it. I carried the shame for 30 years till I had my spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And then realized, oh my goodness, I am not those labels. And if I tried to cut those parts of me out, then I wouldn't be this magnificent woman that I am today. So
amen.
Yeah, you just spoke to my soul because it's what I believe and I try to instill in my clients. Like your past does not define you. Your current thoughts and actions do. So I had goosebumps as you were speaking because that is my truth. That's also my personal experience, that I do the work I do in the world because of my past.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was led to the exact work that I am spiritually here to do. So that was so beautiful. And it just, I know it's going to give people hope, right? That their past doesn't define them. They have to do the work, as you and I know personally, and from teaching this for so many years, but it's so worth it.
Yes, you define you. You define you. and you are sourced by something far higher than what happened to you.
Yes, 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 yes. We're going to take a final break. When we come back, I want to talk more about this and so much more in our final segment. We'll be back in a moment, my friends. Be sure to grab a copy of Exit the Maze, One Addiction, One Cause, One Solution at drdonnamarks.com. We'll be right back for our last segment.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
We can all use a little more peace and joy in our lives. Don't you agree? Counselor, best-selling author, and self-nurturing expert Kelly Grimes of CultivatingPeaceAndJoy.com is passionate about empowering overwhelmed and exhausted women to live with more peace, joy, and meaning through the practice of self-nurturing. Through her experience working with individuals, speaking, providing workshops, and teaching professional and leadership development to forward-thinking organizations, Kelly knows that nurturing peace in the world begins from the inside out. That's why she created the free Cultivating Peace and Joy mobile app that brings you beautiful self-nurturing reminders, guided meditations, empowering practice tools, and daily prompts with an inspiring question to guide your daily self-nurturing practice. Download your free Cultivating Peace and Joy mobile app today at cultivatingpeaceandjoy.com.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. At the Equal Justice Initiative, we believe mass incarceration has to end. There is this presumption of dangerousness and guilt that gets assigned to Black and brown people. We have to confront our history of racial injustice and commit to a new era of truth. There's something better waiting for us, something that feels more like freedom. Truth can inspire change. Please learn more at eji.org.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Dr. Donna Marks. Dr. Marks, you know, I didn't say it at the front, but I really think it's important that I talk about this because way back in 1989, this is how long you have been serving this community. You developed a chemical dependency training program at Palm Beach Community College, which has grown into a 4-year degree and received the Florida Governor's Council Award. Talk about passion, right, for what you do. I can imagine how many lives have been changed just from that work and that entire program.
It's really amazing. When I was, by the way, I was a high school dropout to get married and have a baby at age 16. By the time I was 18, I was a single divorcee with a child. And they had no programs then to help, none. And it was a very difficult time in my life, very stressful. And I was working as a waitress. And out of that, I realized that I had to get my high school diploma and I had to go to college if I didn't want to be doing this the rest of my life. So that was a blessing. I'd always been, in spite of my wayward ways at times, I've always had a spiritual connection. Sometimes I put it on hold or I just disconnected, but it's always been there. But when I was finally getting my one of my mentors when I started practicing psychotherapy said, you have to get your doctorate degree. And I'm like, I can't get my doctorate degree. I've already called around, and I'm a single mom. I'm working as there was several marriages, by the way. I don't want to minimize, that was one of my addictions, get married and have a family. Everything will be fine. But anyhow, I was divorced again with another child, and it was he said, I said, I can't do it. I just can't. I've already called. You have to put 40 hours a week in the clinic, plus, this and that and the other. And he said, well, you can get your doctorate in adult education, and you don't have to do that internship in the clinic. And you can just use your life experiences and your teaching and your groups that you're doing, and you can, base your research and all on that. So I didn't want to do it. He picked up the phone and made an appointment for me to talk to the dean of that department. And before I knew it, I had my doctorate degree and education. So I'm very grateful to Dr. Badger. He's no longer here for influencing me in that way. But when it was time to do the dissertation, I'm like, I don't know really what, I don't really know what to do it on. And I was so frustrated, and I came up with some idea, and they said, no, we don't like that idea. What are you kind of interested in? I said, well, I didn't really want to be interested in addiction, but I kind of am. And so anyhow, out of all that story came the idea to develop a chemical dependency training program. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because I had been to many therapists trying to find out what the hell was the matter with me. Nobody understood addiction. And I also had noticed whenever I was at social events, a lot of therapists were heavy, heavy drinkers. And I felt that it was a travesty that from the time I had a little child and we were going to therapy when she was 5, nobody addressed the drinking. And it was really the core problem, not mine, not just mine, but the whole system. And so I developed this chemical dependency training program. I did a survey in the community, sent out 30 or 50 randomly distributed questionnaires that were basic signs and symptoms of alcoholism. And only one person passed it. One person got a 76. Everyone else got like a 30, 40, 50. It was very basic questions. And very similar to what you'd find on the AA site. And not only did they fail it, they were angry. This isn't a such and such test and da 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 da. So anyhow, I developed the program, and it's so interesting that we're talking about this today because there was a treatment facility here that was free. It was the best, in my opinion, ever in the community, then and now. And the director was a friend of mine. His name was Robert Bazone, and he had the tools to be able to bring in people to teach the courses. He had the tools to bring these, to really put this program together. So he and I and the director of the continuing education department at the local college here, at the time it was a community college, now it's a state college, implemented this program. And so people who were psychotherapists who didn't know about addiction could come and learn about it. And then people who wanted to become certified addiction professionals could come and take all the courses, and that would be their education component of getting certified. And then he had all this program for his employees to be able to come and get their continuing education and their general education knowledge. So it was wonderful. I actually had breakfast with him this morning because when my book was picked up by a publishing company, because of all the awards that it had won, and because I was fortunate to find this wonderful book agent, he's in the book. So I met with him this morning and gave him a copy of it. Since then, he told me that that our little program at the continuing education department has turned into a 4-year degree at the college. So that is a legacy that came out of all this dysfunction.
Yes, but I love that. I love that our legacies can be born from our greatest pain. So what a beautiful ripple effect your work has had and your whole entire life, right? It gives purpose to the pain. And that's how I try to describe it to my clients when they say, well, don't you wish this, and this didn't happen? I said, I used to.
Right.
When I labeled those experiences as something
Right.
wrong with me, I said, no. I said, I can look back even, and this could be triggering for someone. I could even look back at the abuse and say, there's complete forgiveness. I can't explain it. There's complete forgiveness, not for the act, but for the energy within myself. And I never thought I would get there. That happened probably 25 years ago. And I never thought I would get there. And honestly, Dr. Marks, it wasn't conscious. It wasn't, I am going to forgive these two people. I never had that thought. Just one day I woke up and it was gone.
Such a freedom, such a
Oh,
freedom.
freedom. And on top of it, with one of them, I created a completely brand new relationship where I was, I don't want to say position of power, where I was in my own power. And what that did for the rest of everyone else affected, changed many lives. Because they're like, if you can forgive, why can't we? Even though they weren't part of the abuse, they witnessed things, do you know what I mean? And held resentment. When I healed, they all healed.
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, it's so powerful. So we have just a couple minutes. So if someone wants to reach you, connect with you, I've been sending them to drdonnamarks.com. Is there anything else you would like to invite them to or tell them about?
Well, if they register, it says register for update and events, and I would encourage everybody to do that. And of course, there's no fee for that. And I do weekly blogs that they would automatically receive. They would receive an invitation to the Course in Miracles class, which is every Wednesday night at 6, available. It's for an hour. It's available on Zoom. And there's also some really great meditations on there. All the articles, there's different TV and podcast interviews. So it's a good resource for information about not just addiction, but mental health and how to love yourself and relationships and all those intricacies of life.
Well, I recommend everyone get to drdonnamarks.com. I am thrilled that you were here with me today, that I highlighted your book in Aspire Mag's top 10 inspiring books list.
Yes, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you are sharing your wisdom in Aspire magazine. So Donna, thank you. There are no accents. I'm so grateful our paths have crossed. I am so, my heart is full knowing that this conversation will transform many lives. And I want to invite everyone, if you struggle with addiction, you have a friend struggling with addiction, get a copy of Exit the Maze, One Addiction, One Cause, One Solution. You do not have to walk the path alone, my friends. Visit drdonnamarks.com today. Until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.